Welcome back to Factorio. Last video we started working through the Space Age DLC and constructed the ribcage base on Nauvis. This video we get into the actual DLC and go to space to conquer our first planet. The game plan for today's episode follows 5 main steps. Step 1, getting into space. Step 2, automating space science. Step 3, making it to another planet. Step 4, making a base on Vulcanus to make the new science pack. And Step 5, coming back to improve the Nauvis base. And so, let's get right into it. The very first thing I do this episode is tear down the starter copy base thing. It was mostly functional, but the more I think about it, the more I realize that it's kinda really dumb. After ridding myself of that, I get to work automating everything I need for rockets, except the silo. I handcraft that, of course. Fortunately for me, yellow science taking 2/3 of the materials it takes to make a rocket means I already have low density structure and blue circuits automated, so all I need is a rocket fuel build and a solid fuel build to fuel that. With those 3 items done, I can build a rocket, the first of many, many rockets. Using this rocket, I can make my first space platform. Space platforms are pretty much these bricks in space that you just build stuff on. They're quite expensive, but quite cool. This first platform is simply going to be in Nauvis orbit to make space science. The initial design is very... that, but it gets me some science. Slowly. The first thing I research with the trickle of science I'm getting from the space platform, which will eventually be named, and I quote, "Bales of Space Science, ... Get it? Question mark. No explanation needed on that name, but anyway, before working on making bales better, I switch focus for a moment to make a bot mall. This thing will be producing a lot of the buildings I'm going to need, even if it's a bit slow. But I can't dawdle for long, and quickly I get back to working on the space science. Due to my intelligent decision to make all science at 45 per second, this platform is going to need to be decently large. A whole 180 assemblers for the science large, but its components are very simple, so no trouble there. Just crushing asteroids into their products and shoving the iron ore from the metallic into furnaces for the iron plates. And, with the platform all planned out, I can just wait for it to build. I will mention that I gave it the option of sending down spare iron, but since I built it to scale, that's silly, so I end up getting rid of that later. Now, with bales finished, does it function? Does it produce 45 science per second? No! See, while I may have as many buildings as necessary, there is simply not enough asteroids passing by to feed production. I end up adding a lot more collectors to try and fix that issue, and while that would probably eventually fix the issue if I added enough, I just leave it like this for now, as it will take me a while to build a new science after this, so it'll have plenty of time to back up, which gives me, the perfect excuse to not work on it. And on top of that, purple science has not been working, at all, since all the red circuits are being eaten by blue circuits, but that's besides the point, or something. For now, this is space science. Now, with that working, it's about time I actually start moving into space. But how do I do that? Bales is perfectly, functional, but they can't fly to another planet. Well, I will not be using that platform. I'll be making a new one. By simply asking this rocket, very kindly, it will request a space platform starter kit and send it up to space to make a new platform that I name Takanashi Traveler. Because, Phoenix, fire, heat, hot, volcano, Vulcanus? Yeah, that makes sense. With this new platform, it's time to plan out production on it again. But this time, we will not be making any of the funny beakers. No, we will be making ballistics. Specifically, 1 yellow ammo a second. See, I've never really seen a space platform, so I just figured that I should maybe make a lot, and I figure this should hopefully be enough, but I guess we'll find out. Fortunately, the biggest part of this is just the furnace stack I need for it, but considering the industry on bales, this is nothing. While it takes 40 furnaces, it only takes 8 assembling machines and 3 asteroid crushers. However, that's not the only thing I will need to move through space. I will also need movement. In order to achieve that, I can just strap these thrusters to the back of Takanashi the space brick and feed them with both fuel and oxidizer. The fuel is made with water and carbon, and the oxidizer with water and iron ore. I can get water from melting the ice I get out of the oxide asteroids, and the other two are the same as space science. Iron ore from metallic asteroids and carbon from carbonic. Now, for gun. Placing gun turrets around the edge of the platform along the belt, quite similar to my old base defenses, allows the guns to be ready to shoot at any larger asteroids that try and break the platform. And, by placing asteroid collectors between the guns, I give them easy access to collect all of the chunks that come from the broken up space rocks. While this is more dangerous than just chilling in space like bales, it means that I'll have a much larger and much more consistent stream of resources coming in, making it less likely to have resource issues, which is good, because if you run out of ammo, the evil space stones will absolutely shred your space platforms. But, with that all planned out, I watch as the Takanashi Traveler builds and collects its first few resources to kickstart itself. With Takanashi built, I research the Vulcanus discovery and send it off on a test flight. As nice as watching this test flight without the GUI was, and as nice as it was to see that the Takanashi Traveler was perfectly safe, if a bit slow due to the lack of oxidizer, in retrospect, I think I accidentally made it lap between Vulcanus and Nauvis multiple times in one go with how long it was going, but I suppose that means it is for sure safe, so no big deal I suppose. After confirming that the Takanashi Traveler was 100% functional, I deposit all my items into boxes and launch myself up into space to fly out to my first new planet, Vulcanus. After landing on Vulcanus, I quickly get to work, breaking down some trees that somehow existed before charring, and placing down my landing pad up near the north end of my territory next to this coal patch. Breaking some rocks, I find that they give me iron, copper, stone, and a small bit of tungsten. Very handy. Starting on a new planet is a bit daunting, but with some starting supplies shipped down from the Takanashi Traveler, it should go somewhat smoothly. Or so I hope. The first thing I want to make on Vulcanus is foundries. I want them so bad that I make some pretty terrible builds until I have enough foundries to make foundries and foundries. Foundries are good. Not only are they super fast, but they also have an inbuilt productivity bonus of 50%, meaning that every 2 items you craft in one, you get 1 more for free. This rough foundry automation is okay. I get it up to the point that the only thing I need to hand feed is the tungsten ore I'm getting from rocks. I would automate it, but there is not any tungsten patches in my territory, so hand feeding will have to do for now. Soon after this, I also set up a similarly rough automation for the new big mining drills. These drills are also great. They mine faster and deplete resources half as fast as the normal ones, so of course I will want a lot of these. However, I still need to get automated tungsten for this to be very good. On Nauvis, that would be easy. Just run over and make a mine. However, if I were to do that here, it would be problematic. See, you may have heard me refer to the area I'm building in as my territory, and that is a lot more literal here on Vulcanus. See, if you look at the map, you may see that there is a lot of area with these red lines over it. This shows me where the main danger on Vulcanus lives. The Demolisher. These massive worm fellas have absurd amounts of health, absurd amounts of regen, are immune to, or highly resistant to, a lot of different things, and will destroy anything, even cliffs, with just a poke of their friendly looking mouths. Now how am I gonna kill that? Well, you see, it's actually pretty simple, and it all starts here. A small build that just makes a bunch of turrets and red ammo. On a planet like Nauvis, this technology is no longer very handy due to me having flamethrowers, though, as you can probably imagine, the worms are not going to get hurt by fire. While the gun turrets are fairly weak on their own, if I set up a bunch of them in one spot and wait for the demolisher to attempt to take out the trash, he suddenly gets jumped by hundreds of bullets from all directions, and while he breaks a lot of them and puts up a pretty good fight, in the end, bullet beats worm. Now, even with that, a strategy like this is quite expensive. Or it would be if I was on Nauvis, but here on Vulcanus, iron and copper are literally free, just coming out of the lava lake, so no need to go light on the turrets here. And with my first demolisher down, I can finally get a consistent stream of tungsten. This tungsten is not only good to keep production on the foundries and miners up, but also for the new science. Despite being extraplanetary, this science is pretty easy. Just tungsten carbide from tungsten and carbon, tungsten ingots from tungsten and molten iron, and molten copper from lava. This little build is not final, as you can probably imagine, just here to get a small 60 science per minute to get some initial research. In order to use this science, however, it's time to start making rockets here on Vulcanus. While copper and iron are literally free over here, I do need to get rid of a lot of stone byproduct, and do a lot of coal liquefaction. But with this absolute brick of production, I can now start shipping the science up to the Takanashi Traveler for transport. I swing by Nauvis real quick with 7,000 Metallurgic Science and get to researching the basic techs. This includes my far favorite, cliff explosives, but also asteroid reprocessing, a new tier of belts, artillery, better coal liquefaction, and tier 3 speed modules. While that works, I head back to Vulcanus and immediately get to work making a build to make a bunch of cliff explosives. They're a bit different than they are in the base game, but not too complicated. And now, with these blue dynamite bundles, I can finally get rid of these darned cliffs, and build in peace. With all those cliffs out of the way, I can now begin construction of the proper science build of 45 science per second. You may remember me saying a few seconds ago that the metallurgic science was easy. Well, that's true. Unless you're trying to make 45 science every second without productivity modules, then it's very, extremely annoying. My questionable build decisions aside, however, I start off with the easy part, lava processing. I make a square of foundries around this lava lake in the middle of my initial territory and make belt lines to dump all the unwanted stone right back into the lava. Next, I make a coal mine. This would normally be a task barely worth bringing up at all, but due to the demands of tungsten carbide, I end up with 8 red belts of coal needing to be routed down to the build. Fortunately, the big mining drills make that much less miserable than it sounds, as I only need 4 drills to fully saturate 1 red belt. Other than the big coal belt, the tungsten carbide build is easy. Or, I thought it was until I looked closer. But before worrying about that, I also make a tungsten plate build. Quite large, but not too bad. However, there's one thing I need for both of those builds to even matter, and that's tungsten. And not a little tungsten. 310 big drills of tungsten. 23 belts of tungsten. Anyway, after killing a bunch of worms, I managed to get enough tungsten mines to route in. But it took me a few hours, and was probably the worst thing I have to do on this planet. Mostly due to all the lava. While lava is a valuable resource, you can't build on it, so I had to route all those belts around it, which causes issues when it is literally everywhere on the planet. But I'm done with it, and will hopefully not have to expand to more mines during this playthrough, or I might just die on the spot. But after that miserable experience, I can build the actual science foundries, and that is pretty nice. There is something about the bright orange science that is just really pleasing. I will reiterate that that is at least partially my fault for not using productivity modules in anything at all ever, but even with that, that's not all the issues, and the next one is simply throughput. There's no way one rocket silo is going to be able to transport all this, so I end up making 10 to transport the science. Though, the massive break of rocket part production can't actually keep up with that, so I guess the hope is that it'll back up while I'm not using it, so that it'll be able to transport 10 rockets worth of science all at once when the Takaneshi Traveler arrives to grab the science. Before I leave, however, there is a few more things I want to make here. See, foundries, big mining drills, and the new green belts have to be made here on Vulcanus, so I need to make proper automation for them. However, instead of making something nice or sensible, I create a cargo wagon line for foundries, because why not, I guess. I also find an even more accursed way of using this technology to make big mining drills, using filtered long-handed inserters to move between parallel wagons, and worst thing is, it isn't even throughput limited at this scale. For belt production, I do make them pretty normal though, so no issues there. Besides the fact that the new splitters need blue circuits, which is incredibly annoying. But with those made and connected to a logistics network to be put in rockets whenever requested, it's about time I return to Nauvis, where I immediately need to bootstrap nuclear fuel because it ran out while I was gone. Now back on Nauvis, it's about time I get to work on improving the rib cage like I promised last episode. While I don't have lava here, with some calcite and ore I can still make molten metal in foundries on Nauvis, and then use more foundries to cast that molten metal into plates, giving me 2 stages of that 50% productivity bonus on the iron plates and faster crafting on top of that. During this, I also make another space platform called the Flare Ferry because, you know, flare is fire, fire is heat, heat is hot, hot like volcano, Vulcanus is volcano land. It makes sense. But anyway, this one is for transporting the belts, foundries, and drills, and calcite from Vulcanus back to Nauvis. Of course, with how beneficial all this is, I want to use it for everything I can. First, I use it to make iron plates, then pipes, then iron sticks, and gears. Last on iron, I finally get the perfect excuse to get rid of the big ugly steel tumor, and I use steel foundries in its place. Much smaller, much cleaner, and much less ugly. Moving on to copper, as it turns out, only 1 rib worth of copper plates is needed, as opposed to the 14 blocks of copper wire I need. After all, the vast majority of copper is used for circuits, and very few things use copper plates. Other than that, there is one last thing I can use both the molten copper and molten iron for, and also definitely helps with the, not needing any copper plates thing. And that one thing that I need is something I need a lot of: low density structure. With foundries, you can use molten copper and iron, and the only solid input being plastic, and of course the wonderful perk of 50% productivity. With that done, that's all the upgrades I can currently do. However, there is one small problem. Calcite. I'm getting it from Vulcanus, but frankly I don't want to keep using rockets from Vulcanus to fuel these, which is fueling my extreme desire to go to Gleba next. See, from what I can tell, most people go to Fulgora next, and I do want to get my hands on the electrodynamics facility and the recycler, but Gleba gives me better labs, Spidertron, and frankly, I've kinda always been interested in the logistical challenge of Gleba more so than Fulgora's. And, on top of that, it gives me advanced asteroid processing, which would allow me to get calcite from space, and just drop it down here whenever. That said, Vulcanus kinda killed me, so I guess I'll decide that while I work on something else. But, for now, that's gonna be everything for today, so farewell for now, and see ya next time.